Awesome. So welcome everyone. Looking forward to today's conversation. This is our Bridges of Belonging series, episode 30. We've been going for just over a year and really excited today to welcome in Amrit Gill and Randip. And we're going to have a really amazing conversation. I do want to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories. And we lost Randip, so we're going to welcome him back in. The traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, whose lands I've been grateful to be an uninvited guest on over the last 25 years. I'm based here in Victoria, so home of the Wasanic, Songhees, and Esquimalt peoples. And later this week, I actually get to spend some time at the beautiful Songhees Wellness Center connecting around sport and physical activity and Indigenous culture. So excited about the week ahead and doing some of that work. My name is Andrea Carey. I'm the Chief Inclusion Officer with Inclusion Incorporated. And I know many of you have joined us before, so I'll just begin with a reading. And today's reading is from Dr. Vivek Murthy's book, Together, and he is a Surgeon General of the United States of America. It's his second appointment in that role, and he wrote this beautiful book about connection and how we need to support each other and find places to come back together to build senses of belonging and connection. And so a lot of this book really resonated strongly with me, and I thought it would be a good connection point to begin today's conversation. So here we go. A lot of our isolation is the degree to which people feel invisible. Invisibility brings with it a deep ambiguity of not being located. So when you come and show up and have concern and conversation from their location, you're rehumanizing the situation that has lost connection at a very deep level. The humanization is the beginning of belonging, and when we share space together, we promote mutual sense of belonging. This is one reason why communities have historically made sure to build intentionally shared spaces into their towns and cities. Throughout the world, dwellings have clustered in public squares where town-wide events from markets and bazaars and concerts are held. In colonial times, American communities were built around a village green where children played and everyone got to know each other. In early modern planning days, the idea of utopia was a self-contained community surrounded by parks and separate from industry and agriculture. These towns would be managed by the citizens who shared their economic interest in them, forging a distinct sense of community belonging. This ideal was another casualty of the rise of suburbia and the dominance of car culture over people culture. When people occupy the same space, spending time there and sharing both the responsibility and the rewards from it, people become grounded together. We look at the community gardening movement as a perfect example. Around the world, people are growing fruits and vegetables together, creating a shared stake in public and private plots of earth. That sort of imagination helps address a deep sense of ungroundedness, which seems to be part of modern society. What we describe are important parts and challenges of our time, given the many trends of migration and virtual work and commerce, which make community harder to build and prioritize. We need physical common ground even more than ever to form the spaces where we come together to live, work, play, and belong. So hopefully that resonates with all of us, and certainly an opportunity to, as we talk about today and our two amazing guests, their journeys of how they're creating a space for people to show up and connect around Punjabi Hockey Night in Canada. So I'm going to introduce both of our amazing guests. So Randip Janda has become one of Canada's leading bilingual broadcasters. Signing on with Sportsnet in October 2015, Randip currently hosts Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi edition, and is also the co-host of the People Show on Sportsnet 650 in Vancouver. He began his broadcasting career with Omni Television, amassing editorial and production experience on Omni News. We're looking forward to hearing more about Randip's journey today. Amrit Gill became the first woman on Hockey Night in Canada's Punjabi edition in 2015. Her work focuses on telling stories that include recognizing individuals whose trials and tribulations in sport have been vastly underrepresented. Her passion for diverse storytelling and emphasis on digital strategy has played a pivotal role in the show's success. And again, looking forward to hearing more from Amrit, whose birthday it is today. So happy birthday, Amrit. Thanks so much for spending it with us on Bridges of Belonging. So maybe we'll flip to you to get us started.
Well, thank you so much for giving us, this platform to talk about inclusion. It's nice that it's on my birthday because it's one of my favorite words. But yeah, no, I am currently a news producer along with a storyteller on Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi. So doing double duty most of the time, but a lot of my work focuses on inclusion and representation. So I'm excited to have this conversation today.
Amazing. And do you want to tell us a little bit more about how you got started in this space and what that's looked like for you?
Yeah, so I grew up as a hockey fan, and it was the sport I loved. And in high school, we just so happened to have a television class, and I wasn't an athlete. My parents didn't really have the means to put me in ice hockey, but I got to have a camera in my hand thanks to the class in high school, and I'd film our hockey intramurals and I'd create highlight reels and do little like packages. And I was, I was trying to be a reporter, and eventually I got an opportunity after broadcasting school to work with the crew at Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi, and it has been the best ride. Like I don't even consider it a job, and I'm sure Randip can kind of say the same. It's like a family, a passion project, and we're so grateful that we get to do it, what we do.
Oh, that sounds lovely. I look forward to hearing even more as we go through this conversation today. And Randip, tell us a little bit about you and your background and how you got started in this. And you're on mute.
The classic broadcaster mistake, right? Just unmute yourself is the first thing you're supposed to do. It's awesome to be on with you here and having this conversation, especially with Amrit, who has been such a vital part of our show. But my story, I guess I'm a communicator now. We all are as humans, but in the last 10 years or so, it's kind of what I've really enjoyed being in a professional sense, and being a broadcaster with Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi since 2014, and in radio now as well. So I'm a sports broadcaster. I really enjoy covering sports, but over the last 5 years now, just having that societal and the community feel to our show has been so important. Having that community link. So when somebody asks, tell me a little bit about yourself, I generally, we gravitate towards our profession. I'm a broadcaster, but a proud Punjabi Canadian as well. And I think with this show and Hockey Night specifically, that's really come in the last 5 years. So when somebody asks me, tell you, a little bit about yourself, just a proud Punjabi Canadian that really has mixed sports into his livelihood and is living the dream. So it's awesome to be on with you, and it's really looking forward to having conversations that are regarding, inclusion, diversity, because it's the world we live in. For often, for way too long, it was ignored. There were people left out of the conversation, and hopefully our show plays a small part in making that right and a step in the right direction.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that journey in terms of like how the Punjabi edition came up to be and how important that is for the Punjabi community to have sort of that place and that connection.
Well, it does precede both Amrit and I, our involvement in the show. So it does have a history going back to about 2008, 2009. And it started off as a pilot project. Punjabi was one of a few languages that were chosen to say, okay, let's see if these other communities really, love hockey and will view hockey in their own language. It was legitimately a pilot project to see if it would work, and those audience groups would actually, attach themselves to the game further. And Punjabi was a huge hit. Cantonese and Mandarin were, they had their success to a relative degree, but Punjabi was a huge hit. And our colleague Harnarayan Singh was involved with the show going back to those days. So that's how it started. Over time, though, what we saw was, and me as a viewer, until that we made the switch over to Omni Television, Rogers, there was a potential to grow even further, have a studio set up and just include more voices. And do more innovative things within our studio. And that's what we've been able to do for the last 5 or 6 years. Amrit's done an awesome job telling stories and highlighting, individuals in the community, stories that otherwise would go untold. But even just being able to communicate hockey in a different style, a different language, it's really flourished in the last 5 years. But yeah, it has a history going back to 2008, 2009.
Awesome. And tell me, Randip, how you got involved in it. Like, what did that look like for you?
So I actually started working at Omni Television, much like Amrit is doing right now, back in 2010. So originally I was working on the news side of things. I was working as an assignment editor and kind of worked my way up. In 2014, Rogers acquired the rights to the NHL broadcast, and that provided a pretty unique opportunity for a group of us that were working within that building. And I have to give props to Bhupinder Hundal, who is somebody that I know Amrit considers a mentor. He's been a mentor of mine as well. He's a former host of Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi. He basically said, "You're doing this." And I was kind of apprehensive, I'm not going to lie, which sounds foolish now. But at that time, I was like, I don't know, Bhupinder, I'm not really sure if my Punjabi is good enough or if I can do it. And he said, no, this is going to be the opportunity of a lifetime for you. You need to do this. And I was always a hockey fan growing up, 4 or 5 years old, collecting hockey cards, following it throughout, writing articles on the side. So to me, when the NHL rights were acquired by Rogers and Omni got this opportunity, I was kind of pushed into it, which looking back at it was probably the best decision that I was forced to make. So in a lot of ways, it was, once I got going and I really enjoyed it, I really started to it didn't take long for me to really buy into it. Amrit's absolutely right that it doesn't feel like work, but it was, I guess, timing was important. And so it was just being ready, being a hockey fan, and it just kind of worked together.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And sounds like, one of those moments where it's sort of like, okay, this is a pivotal opportunity in your life. And the path that it's taking you down is, I'm sure, a really beautiful journey.
Absolutely. And it taught me also, at that point where I might have not been comfortable to take that leap, but that's where you grow. In moments of being uncomfortable is where you really find yourself, right?
Absolutely. What a powerful comment, because if we've ever had a time in our lives where we've been more uncomfortable, I think over the last year and a half is probably a pretty good opportunity to reflect on what all of those moments have been in a variety of different ways. So hopefully that's given you some strength throughout all of this as well. So Amrit, I'm going to come back to you. Tell us a little bit more about how you got started in the Punjabi edition and sort of how you got into, you talked a little bit about your passion for hockey, but how did this journey unfold for you and what's it looking like right now?
So I actually grew up watching the show as a kid. I grew up in a community where there were very few South Asians, so I didn't get to practice the language. I knew very little about my culture, but my grandma, who only spoke Punjabi, was a hockey fan at the same time. So we'd always tune in, and it was, an opportunity for us to bond over something we loved and for me to learn the language a little bit. I had the high school television class, which really, convinced me, okay, this is what I want to do, television, sports journalism. And from there, I went to broadcasting school. And again, I bring up Bhupinder Hundal, first year broadcasting school, you're not really supposed to get an internship, but he was there giving advice to everybody. And I remember going up to him after the session and being like, hey, do y'all have a spot at Hockey Night Punjabi? Can I just come in to watch? I'm a fan of the show. Just let me push a button. And, he gave me that opportunity and I tried to make the most of it. The first season I was there, and I went from pushing a couple of buttons to, hey, can I do some social media, perhaps a story? So from fan to broadcaster, really. And it's been the best journey because it's taught me about my culture, owning my space, being proud of my roots. And I don't think without the show, I'd be the person I am today. I don't think I'd be able to honor my ancestors the way I do today. And that's something I'm forever grateful for. So yeah, that's from fan to broadcaster. And I'm just so lucky to have worked here.
I love the connection back to your grandma, and I watched a video that you had done talking about that earlier as well. And I had a grandma that was a total super sports fan as well, hockey and baseball. And I was always just like floored because I don't think there was no, I would say there was nobody in my life that was as big a sports fan as my grandma was. And I was just like, this is so cool, because I grew up in more of a traditional town where I wouldn't say that a lot of women were playing sports or watching sports. And then I had this grandma that was like kind of blowing my mind watching all these sports and like such a super fan. So yeah, I love that your grandma was a big hockey fan as well, and that led you into it.
Those are some of the best memories for me too. And those are the ones that I cherish the most, just watching the show as a kid. So I'm glad I can be giving back in any way that I can right now with our current platform.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. So tell me a little bit about a time you felt like you didn't belong, and what was that journey like for you?
Oh gosh. I think we know hockey is a very male dominated sport, and it's getting better from the diversity side of things. But there are very few women in this industry that come from diverse backgrounds, and just trying to be able to find somebody that you can connect with, or talk to about any adversity that you may be facing. It's hard. I remember going to a press box once, and I was just nervous. I was like, geez, am I supposed to be here? I don't feel like I should be here. There's a bunch of suits. Nobody looks like me. So, and I honestly did not want to be there, because I just felt like, you're allowed, you've earned your credentials, but it felt like I was on the outside looking in. And that for me was a little bit of a turnoff when it came to the sport. It made me a little bit, sad, a little bit disappointed. I even started loving the sport less after that, to be quite honest. And I had to refine my love for the sport. What is it about the sport that makes me happy? It's, people coming together. And I think, just the first couple of times I went to the press box, it was a daunting experience. And that was definitely a time where I didn't really feel like I belonged.
Thank you for that, and for that vulnerability around that. Randip, what about you? What about a time you didn't feel like you belonged?
It comes from a different perspective, obviously being a male, but I actually, tap into that press box experience as well. When I had started going to games back in 2011, 2012, and representing the company. And even later on, when I was involved with Hockey Night in Canada, hockey now is in a better place than it was 5-6 years ago. At that point, even simple things of people not saying hello, or just not being perceived as a hockey person. And I say that in quotation marks, because what is a hockey person? That's the problem that hockey has right now, is that there is, a definition of what a hockey person should be. And that's why the sport in a lot of ways has been limited over the years. But going to the press box, it was not a fun experience. It felt like you were an outsider. And I say that openly, because even though I can speak English, it's my first language, there is this perception that, oh, it's the Hockey Night Punjabi guys, and they kind of do something different. Even though we covered the same sport, we covered, in a lot of ways, worked more than some of the people that attended these games. We worked every single week. We worked a double header every weekend. But there was this outsider element that for a couple of years there, yeah, I totally echo what Amrit's saying. It was I think it was more from a cultural point of view, and just being perceived as the other, that was not a great time. You felt like you were going to the game, but you weren't necessarily being, the camaraderie definitely was not there. Over time, time and getting more opportunities, and just breaking down those barriers, and through, your own work, but also through leadership of others, and being given opportunities, I think that perception slowly started to go away. But that was an early situation where it felt like you were kind of a bit of an outsider. I mentioned that again, and not the most inclusive space. But fast forward 6-7 years from that point on, hockey, I think, is in a better place. It's got a long way to go, no question. It's not the most inclusive sport, especially when you compare it to sports, global sports like soccer. But I feel, though, media sometimes changes quite slow compared to the rest of society. And that was a classic example where even though Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi was popular, within our own profession at that time, we were not seen as maybe as the same. And I think that's changed now. I think with the leadership of a lot of people, whether it comes in the company or, you know, in the community, our own work, because I don't want to short sell us either. We've worked hard to, you know, get where we're at. That perception that, you know, there's knocking on a door and saying, hey, yeah, let me in, or essentially, you know, no, sometimes you just have to kind of storm it and force yourself to have the conversation. And that's what I think a lot of our group, a lot of our show has been able to do. And Amrit's done a great job with that as well, where, you know, being somebody that didn't know that much Punjabi early on to being now the, you know, voice of profile stories, not only in Punjabi and English, that's hard work, you know, doing what Harnaran does now at the English network with CBC and Hockey Night Canada, that's amazing. Being able to do what I do on a daily basis, I'm really lucky with that. And that comes from just being persistent and hard work. And you know, Raja Shergill is another individual that you'll hear about in the future as well. He's doing work in radio in Vancouver, but he'll be more prominent in Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi. So it's one of those things you can, you know, we all have those moments, but what I really love about our group is that it didn't matter that you have those experiences. They kept on going. They kept on working hard, and that's something that we should all be proud of, because it changes you, it shapes the way you view the world. But that fire, our entire group has had that, and Amrit's been a great example of that as well over the last, you know, number of years since she was involved with the show. And you know, there's always online criticism. I get it every single day, but you know, I feel like everybody has had to deal with it, and Amrit's done a great job dealing with everything along with the rest of our team. So there's going to be that adversity. I just love the way our group deals with it.
That's so cool. And out of dealing with that and kind of collectively dealing with that, has that built the connection and kind of camaraderie and supporting each other around that? Like, do you talk about it openly with each other in terms of how you're each navigating and supporting each other?
Yeah, it is one of the best environments you can be in when you walk into the studio. Even outside of the studio, we have a group chat going on. We're in constant communication, checking in with each other, and you know, we're colleagues, but it also is a family at this point. We really care about each other, and you know, we want to see everybody succeed, because it means more opportunities will be opened up for the next in line. And I think that's what we're all striving for. We want to be able to create more spaces to those, you know, who have been overlooked. And if it means going through adversity, it means going through adversity, but also knowing that you have a community behind you that's checking in on you. It makes it all worth it at the end of the day.
I think an important thing is just echoing what Amrit said there, but also we've all kind of experienced it in our own way. I think early on, as the show was gaining popularity, it was so new to us, where, you know, maybe Harnaran would go through. I remember when we started, and so, you know, Amrit, you probably saw this on social media, but there were a lot of negative comments early, and there was, you know, they were racially motivated comments, and I know originally as, you know, along with the other guys, we had a hard time kind of dealing with that, because it was really new to us. Over time, those, you know, started to kind of actually not come up as often. But also, I think we understood that greater vision of what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to make the show better on a daily basis, but we're also trying to continue what we do. So those sort of things don't happen in 10 years, where, you know, those comments that you get, hopefully because of what we do, maybe it plays a small role in it, that 10 years from now, a kid doesn't have to do that, because we're going to normalize our existence on television, on social media platforms, or on radio. And, you know, so that's what I think in a lot of ways is, maybe early on we had some trouble dealing with it, and those comments kind of stuck. But I think going forward, we just focused on, all right, what's our goal here? What's our goal as a show? And I feel as though every single person on the show, on screen and behind the scenes as well, Nathan, our producer's really been important in that role as well, that we just kind of have this vision of, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? We're a hockey show, but we stand for more than just hockey. And that's been important the last, I'd say at least 4 or 5 years, especially trying to talk about, you know, who we are and what we represent.
It's a very strong sense of community and a sense of social responsibility too. When you walk in the job, you're not just, out there spewing facts and, analyzing the game. You are carrying a community, with you, and you're hoping that they're able to get more opportunities through whatever you're able to do.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, literally a vehicle for social change.
Trying to be.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Amrit, we'll stay with you and tell us about a time you did belong and what does that look and feel like?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the show. Hockey did not feel like it was a sport for me. I didn't even think I could work as a sports broadcaster, but walking into the Hockey Night Punjabi studio, it was majority men, but they were cool. They were like, "Hey, Amrit, why don't you do this? Oh, we can help you through this." I made a lot of mistakes, but they were accepting of them, and they encouraged me to put my best foot forward, and to be able to work in such a positive environment really brought the best out of me. And I think at the end of the day, having that cohesiveness and having that camaraderie brought the best out of each other as well. So I think just going into work every Saturday, you feel like you belong. This is your space. Hockey, you're part of the hockey storyline, and it's just special. Like I don't know if there's a specific word for it other than it's special. And I'm so lucky to be able to, find a love for hockey that I probably wouldn't have had without the show.
What about you, Randip? Tell us about a time that you belong.
Well, okay, working now in English radio as well, I found when I made that transition of working on Hockey Night, Amrit knows, the viewers know that when we go all in on our Punjabi, we go all in. We make references that the community will get, and they hit home. When I switched to, when I made that, I'm doing both now, but when I started at English radio, I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I take who I am, which is a Punjabi Canadian. I teeter on, I teeter and I embrace both sides of who I am, my English speaking and my Punjabi speaking. How do I make that translate in an English medium? How do I stay to who I am, true to who I am? And what I really started doing, and I still do it to this day because it's who I am, is I make those references. And there's a lot of folks that may not get what I'm talking about. But over the last 4 years on radio, if I drop a reference, I explain it. And what I've really, really enjoyed is that non-Punjabi speakers listening to English radio are learning about my background, learning about the references I make. They're learning about my culture, the Punjabi culture. So one thing that I really appreciate is that never, ever have I been told, hey, stick to what the audience may know. And that, is important because you give full license to be who you are on air. And that I think is important because being comfortable with who you are when you're opening it up to, potentially hundreds of thousands of people, to me, that's a form of leadership where you're saying, just go out there and be yourself. And, I credit our boss on radio, because Craig McEwen, who has never, ever said anything about that. Just go out there, be yourself, make those references. And in turn, I feel proud about what I do on a daily basis, because not only am I representing my community, both English speaking and Punjabi speaking, we're doing another thing of informing people out there about my culture. And they might be hilarious references, they might be serious topics, whatever it may be. That's something that I've always loved, and just I felt included in that regard, and saying, just be yourself. And sometimes that's really all you can ask for. And that's what I try to do at Hockey Night as well. We have a lot of jokes. Amrit knows. We crack jokes a lot. We're being very nice here, but on Hockey Night, generally there's a lot of barbs going back and forth, and that's the playful nature of our show. But at the same time, I think it's important as somebody, on that show, that you be yourself. You don't feel as though you have to act a certain way, because once you start doing that, it's not your true authentic self. And that's really the starting point of inclusion. Just be yourself, and people around you will understand who you are, accept who you are, and everybody's doing the same thing. And that's important to me, because I think that's how you get the best out of people. If they're comfortable, if they're being who they want to be, then you get not only great friendships, but you great content at it. Everybody's comfortable, and that's more of a it's a mentality as well. So to me, that's where I look back and say, just when I started at radio, that was, hey, go out there and be yourself. We don't want you to be somebody other than yourself. And that was a big moment.
I love that so much because I mean, we're at a time when there's so many conversations about how people can't be themselves in the spaces and places where they are. And the fact that you've had such a good experience bringing your whole self, sharing, bringing your culture, and helping English and Punjabi communities learn about your culture so that we can kind of all be better together. And, you know, kind of going back to that reading I did today, it's like, how do we create those spaces and places where people can show up and to share and to connect and be together?
Well, just to add to that, sometimes when you are able to be yourself, and I make, you know, I make some comedic references. I'll, you know, talk about food and certain types of food. I don't know if you know, but there's a thing called Punjabi pizza, and I reference that a lot. It's something, you know, that hits with a lot of folks. It's a certain style of pizza that is unique to the Punjabi community. But what I find is that if you put those things out there, you never know what you're going to get. There's commonalities between every single community. So it's something as simple as a food item that all of a sudden interests somebody, and you find a common bond. And it's all, that's really what human, you know, interaction is about. We're all different in our own ways, but really we're all the same. We love hockey. That's what Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi is about. So how do we find more common bonds? And that's been important to me as a broadcaster, is that yes, I have my unique background that I'm proud of, but at the same time, I have a lot that I can share with you that I'm sure we can be able to relate. So we're different, but we're kind of the same. And as a broadcaster, that's what I try to do on a daily basis. And hopefully, you know, it's something that people like and people can feel comfortable with, because that's the goal. If you're broadcasting, whether it's on television or radio, you want people to be joining the conversation and being comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, such a beautiful way to kind of weave that all together, and to just think about you know, in so much of the diversity inclusion conversation right now, we're like, okay, well, how do we talk about the differences? And reminding us to come back to what are our commonalities as well, and to both you know, learn and celebrate those differences, but also really respecting that, you know, we're going to end up coming together and building relationships probably more around our commonalities, and then it's an opportunity to continue to learn and grow and celebrate each other through that. Amazing. Amrit, tell us a little bit about your journey of like self and belonging. We just heard such a beautiful piece from Randip.
You know, I'm always going to bring it back to the show because it has brought out my authentic self, and it takes work, and it doesn't just take work from you. It takes work from the environment you're in and the leaders, you know, that you're surrounded by, to be able to create that space where you can have dialogue, you know, where education of these things is important and that things like this are prioritized. Again, just being one of the very few diverse, you know, women in hockey, the journey obviously hasn't been easy. There have been times where I've second guessed, you know, do I want to keep doing this? I don't know, you know, if there is a space for me here, or, you know, any type of opportunity really. But at the end of the day, it's always been about understanding that this is more of a social responsibility than just a gig. I faced my own adversities and, you know, the Twitter trolls and all of that. And it sucks sometimes. Like, you know, people think you don't know hockey and they reduce your worth to your looks almost. And you don't want to hear that as a woman, and it's tough to get over, and it, you know, puts you in a really bad spot mentally. But I think that kind of goes back to having the right community of people around you and fostering, you know, positive work environments. It's been an interesting journey. There was really, I wish there was like another woman of color, you know, in the hockey industry that I could look up to, or, you know, run parallels with their journey. Okay, am I doing this right or whatever? But I just, you know, sometimes you're just like, okay, that worked, that didn't, that worked, that didn't. You're second guessing yourself a lot. But again, I go back to my mentors. I mean, producer Nathan Sagon, Randip, who has been, you know, more than a colleague, is a brother to me now, and Bhupinder, and everybody